Hey y'all, welcome back to the Blackberry Review. This is episode 4 for season 2. Thank you for being tapped in with us this time. If you've been here from the very beginning, this episode's gonna be fun like no other. Let me tell you something. Today we're going to dive into cancel culture. Very heavy, very heavy. But before we do that, of course, we gotta get into Daily Squeeze. So come on, lean in. So y'all, here's a Daily Squeeze. Your girl, or you know what? Don't do that, Harold.
Your girl.
I talked. My bad. I apologize. Your girl, Catilyn Jenner, made a tweet recently that said, "I've said from the beginning, biological boys should not compete against biological girls. This woke world we're living in right now isn't working." And so, to that, a black woman made a response and said, "You were ESPN Woman of the fucking Year. And it wasn't even a whole year. What about the biological women you beat out for that title? Make it make sense. And the audacity of you to refer to trans women as biological boys, it's a delusion for me." So, I want to know your thoughts on Miss Catilyn Jenner because she is clearly misgendered the whole entire trans community. But then on top of that, she's made a statement regarding involvement into athletics. And that has been a very hot topic over the last couple of years related to trans people's involvement in the Olympics, trans people's involvement in any athletic sport or division. So what are y'all's thoughts?
I want to get y'all's take. I want to hear. Educate me first.
Well, I want to, because this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, just because it's like, one, I am a major advocate of the trans community, and also I am once an athlete, always an athlete, period. I am a prior collegiate athlete. So like this one like really hits home for me. But before I jump in and dive in to the conversation today, I want to give y'all a chance to get out y'all words because once I hit that button, I'm applying pressure. So go ahead and say what you got to say.
So, as I, somewhat opposite to Chris, definitely a major advocate for the trans community. I wasn't a collegiate athlete. I was the nerd who helped the athletes pass in college and high school.
Everybody counts.
Everybody counts. Everybody got a role, baby. Play your position, okay, girl.
Play your role.
Play your role.
Know your role.
And so I'm not one of those individuals who really dives into the nuances of sports because I'm ignorant to that world. However, in just looking at the accounts that Catilyn Jenner has made in the past around various topics, and I think it's appropriate for us to talk about cancel culture because, I mean, I look at Catilyn Jenner and I'm like, girl, you canceled in my book because you still walk in this air of privilege. You went from being a privileged white man to being a privileged white woman, and you're the juxtaposition between her utilizing her identity as a woman versus her still having these practices of cishet white men. It's the confusion for me. It's the double dutch for me. And so in listening to that statement, I see it as extremely problematic because you're going to use this platform to win this coveted award that you like giraffe jumped over other women to get, and you accepted the award because you could have declined it. And then also make this statement about the performance in sports of men, trans women. It's just it's muddled for me. And so I don't really have much to add to this topic outside of how I view Catilyn Jenner as a person and how she has utilized her platform to oppress individuals in the same community that she has joined.
Do you think that she's just doing this to get people rattled and to get more press, like just to get more attention onto? Or do you think that this is like deep rooted?
No, I think that this is who Catilyn Jenner is. The comment that was made was bred in misogyny, right? And as we know, like misogyny happens from a position of power. And even though this person is a part of a new population of folk who typically get the shorter end of the stick or who typically face stigma and discrimination, it was misogynistic because that even with you being a part of this community, you still use your privilege, your white privilege, your platform, your monetary privilege to say what you wanted to say about a specific community and not expect any repercussions to happen. I feel like if this would have been anybody else, the narrative would have been different. But just because this is the white person of trans experience, who we all know, who a lot of people have grown to love, you know, is gonna get looked over. And so like a thought that came to mind initially is that season 1, when we talked about intercommunal stigma. And so like a lot of times we have people a part of vulnerable populations or populations that have been marginalized. Even within those communities, there are systems of power, right? Within your marginalization. And so here is a point example of how you have someone a part of a marginalized community who has power, who uses that power to create more stigma and discrimination and marginalization within their community. Because it was kind of, to me, it presented itself as it presented herself in what happened as if she was disassociating herself from the community that she represents and the struggles that they've been through. Because even with saying that, one, the wording of the statement was incorrect. The term use of biological male or female is very rude, especially for someone of trans experience to use. The proper term would be identified male or female or intersex at birth, because language is everything. That's one. And then two, for you to make a blanketed statement like that when you just received an award that was specifically designed for folks identified female at birth, and you went from your lane by being a person identified male at birth and going throughout your whole athletic career as a male to jumping in front of this long list of women who were identified female at birth, who've done some amazing things for athletics, who've done some amazing things within the world, just within the journey of sport. And you were given this role, you were given this seat, and you stood in it. So for you to say something like this is so much counterproductive.
Do you agree with what she said? Not necessarily because we know how she said it is fucked up, which is a whole nother conversation in and of itself. But do you agree with what she said in the fact that in using your language, those who are identified as male or female or intersex at birth, them participating in athletics or competitions with other people who were identified differently at birth?
Yes, I do agree. And
agree that they should not, agree that they should.
I agree that they should not. And I say this because they're like, when you look at the biology of just human beings, right? So there's different biology that comes to play when you were identified male and identified female at birth. So like taking account of puberty, right? As we all know, those people identified female at birth who do not have any any biomedical intervening that plays a role in their hormones, they go through puberty earlier than those identified as male, right? And so even if you look at the musculoskeletal systems between cisgendered men and cis women, just like growing up, it's different, right? Like genetically, though people identified male at birth have more denser musculoskeletal system. Body masses are bigger. Those identified male at birth have heavier bone density. And as we know, the heavier bone density affects muscle growth. Testosterone affects muscle growth too. So when you have people who were identified male at birth and they're competing in women's sports, that gives them an upper edge.
But would some of that be altered, when you're taking hormones, right? So would that even, trans and they're taking their hormones, like
I'm gonna say 2 years of you taking T blockers is not gonna stop 20 years of testosterone. It's not gonna change your current musculoskeletal system.
But I want to counter that. Even despite the biological predispositions for body mass and all these other different physiological factors, is there really a large marginal difference between the ability of a trans man and a cis het man or a trans woman or a cishet. Like if we put a trans woman up against a cishet woman and they ran, would the physiological differences be that much of a marginal difference to where the trans woman would be at a larger advantage?
So just for time. So you said, I'm gonna give an example. So let's say we're gonna have a race, right? So you have a trans woman, and this was a topic of the past. Like with the high school, there was this young trans girl. So this trans woman, she was a high schooler, and she was winning all these track meets. I think it was somewhere in New England or somewhere. She was winning all these track meets, right? And so the parents of the cisgender young girls were getting upset because this young trans woman was beating everybody, like blowing everybody out the water. So when it comes to like male and female athletics, they're based off of different projections. And those projections are based off of your pure ability and your musculoskeletal system. Because I ran track. So I ran a 400 meter dash, just one lap around. So typically, when it comes to running a 400 meter dash on a professional collegiate level, most, to be competitive, you're running a 46 in 46 seconds for a male. For a female, to be competitive, realistically, all you gotta do is run a 49. That's a 3 second difference.
For me, I feel like,
and in track and field, 3 seconds is a lot.
I feel like this. I feel like there are women, cis or trans, that are able to beat a cis or trans man.
No, yes.
Like, and I say that because what I'm saying is, to me, the whole and things I've had to marinate on, and I could be wrong. Feel free to challenge me, people in the audience. But I feel like just the notion that when we look at the way patriarchy shows up in our society, it shows up in everything. In everything. And sports is no different. The fact that there's a weight class and the fact that we base it off of women weighing this much or women can run this fast or whatever here, but it's higher or larger over in this category for the men. For me, personally, I say if we really just want to push against the system and make room for our trans brothers and sisters, we need to do away with these gender-based weight classes and segmented areas and just say like, if you got to be 110, baby, if you 110, you 110.
But I don't think that's what Chris is meaning. Like he's saying it's a physiological thing. It's right.
There's literally genetic differences between folks identified male at birth and folks identified female at birth.
And that's just base. That's fact.
But is it enough? Is that gap large? That difference large enough to be a difference between you winning a gold medal versus a bronze medal?
It's unfair whenever you're racing. It's your physical body. If you're a trans woman and your physical body is like still has this, like you said, muscle mass of a male, it's okay. Going to.
So you know what so I'm gonna present this to you, okay? So you know how the differences between men and women and how they carry weight, right? So women typically carry weight within their hips and their thighs and their butt, right? The lower ridges, right? And men typically carry weight in their mid region and their upper chest and their bodies, right? So acknowledging that fact, let's say if you had a daughter, right? And your daughter was a boxer, okay? And there was this trans woman that she was boxing up against, new trans woman, right? So she just got her gender marker changed, probably has never started hormone therapy replacement. So your daughter is fighting this person who is like physically stronger than her and can throw some major blows.
So that brings me to my next point. That's a very good scenario. I think that scenario is very unique. And in which case, and I'm gonna be honest, in which case I would feel away. I do think if we're talking about inclusion of trans folks, maybe we should all bring to the table certain level of years on hormones. Right. Maybe we should talk about like, because if there is a change to some aspect of your physiological composition based off you taking hormones, then maybe that can be considered when we are trying to figure out, is this person validated and participating in this particular sport or not?
So I think though, the question remains, what type of solution is there for us to find?
I think the solution is that there needs to be a greater level of advocacy for research within this topic, because one, there's a lack of diversity when it comes to
And it's not black and
inclusion.
white.
Yeah, with the inclusion of people of trans experience within the research period, right? So I think there needs to be some extensive research done around how hormone therapy can affect your musculoskeletal system, and at what points has your body been broken down enough or built up enough to where you can compete with the sex that you identify as, right? But I feel like without their research, it would still be an unknown, and people will still be going off of perceptions and how they feel. But I think that research can make this like a viable thing that can affect policy.
I think the amazing thing, hold on, because we got a lot more to talk about, and I think future Dr. Walker, there'll be amazing research for you. So we're gonna wrap this up and move on to our next segment. But first, I think we have a commercial break, right?
We do. We got a commercial break coming to you right here. We'll be right back. Welcome back, y'all. As you see, we have gotten a refill, and so we are on one. We are on one today. Before we dive any further, first of all, I want to address a couple things. First and foremost, we saw the tweets. We saw the Facebook post. Adrian did not leave the group. We sent him off like motherfucking Sarah.
We can send you your love.
Insert the clip here. Beyonce telling Pharaoh we can send you your bags. No, I'm kidding. Adrian's actually operating with us from behind the camera.
Right there.
Yeah, he right here, y'all. So, and then my last thing I would love to share with you all, the last thing I want to share with you all is that we will be at SMU, Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, Texas on February 16th. We are doing a live episode. So the Blackberry View crew will be coming to you live on the stage at Southern Methodist University to talk with the audience about our queer experiences and how to support and advocate for queer people in our communities.
Oh, and that's my alma mater, y'all. SMU. Yay.
All right, y'all. Look, so we're about to pass it to Q to go ahead and tell us what the juice is. Q, what you got, boo?
Our topic today, what's the juice? This is a very popular topic, very hot topic. Cancel culture.
Cancel that porn voice you got.
You know, because we've been canceling a lot of folks lately.
Adrian, suit up. Q, you're off. You're off.
You see how they treat me on this panel? I'm trying to do my segment.
No, bitch, the way you carrying through this segment is killing me. Come on, kid.
So cancel culture, like what are your opinions centered around cancel culture? Now, we're gonna start very broad, but then we're gonna take it home to like our community and our friends and whatnot. But I wanna know, like, generally speaking, like what's your take? Do you think we go too far with cancel culture? Do you think that we need to educate as opposed to canceling a motherfucker out?
I don't think so, because I think that it holds people accountable for their shit. And cancel culture would not be a thing if people never started speaking up against systems of power, against systems of oppression. Because I know it really started with like the whole Me Too movement, right? A group of women finally felt empowered to come out and say, hey, this man did this to me and it wasn't right. If they never would have did that, it never would have been discussed. This movement would have probably never been started. But from the Me Too movement has started a trend to where people are now advocating for themselves, and they feel like they have the power to really get justice through their injustices. You see what I'm saying? And I think that cancel culture has created a space that keeps people mindful of how they engage and how they treat people. Because even in my position of power, even with all the money, even as a decision maker, if I fuck up, and if I do it repeatedly, people are going to call me out on my shit, and I'm gonna have to deal with it.
I think cancel culture allows people to be put on notice, similar to a lot of Chris's points, but I also have this mindset that in some instances. So let me back up. I was talking to a fraternity brother last night, and he said that because he was like, "What you doing tomorrow, bro?" I said, "Oh, I'm filming with my bitches," and so he was like, "Well, what's the topic?" And he's a cishet black man, and I was like, "Oh, we're talking about cancel culture." And he was like, "Are you talking about cancel?" Chris, we'll touch base offline and unpack. But we were talking about. I was telling him we were talking about cancel culture, and not just within our community. And I said, "What I use Q's language. We're going to start broad and then hone down." And he said, he looked at me. He was like, "I mean, I think it's just a matter of personal preference." Like, and I said, "Okay, well, let me respect your narrative, however, comma." And we had the opportunity to engage in this robust discussion. I do believe that it is a mechanism to help people be on their P's and Q's and know, all right, I'm gonna call you out on your shit. I think about, and I'm gonna speak for myself, but I feel like we may have all have had this instance, that cringy Facebook status you probably made like 10 years ago, or that cringy tweet you probably made like 7 years ago, and you look back and you like, ugh. Bitch, I was problematic. And so realizing that when you see those things and recognize those things, Chris, to your point, if I see that I'm behaving in a certain way or if someone brings something to me, I have two options. No, really, I have three options. One is to ignore. Two is to lash out. Three is to be like, you know what? Let me take inventory of myself and see what I may be doing, because you can't tell a person that the way that you made them feel didn't make them feel that way. And so I think that with cancel culture, we really need to examine the fact that there are behaviors that we may think may be innocent, and it leans almost into like a microaggression, right? Like you don't really necessarily think that you're doing something problematic, but you are. And so in the words of Tyra Banks, learn something from this, okay? And I mean, that's my concept, my thought on cancel culture. I mean, I'll have more later, but
I think cancel culture is a two-edged sword. I think on one ways I appreciate cancel culture, because I think for me, cancel culture means we are not investing energy, time, money, attention into this person, place, or thing. And I think that's okay to do in life, right? There are spaces and places that we've gone where it's like, oh, I had a bad experience at this restaurant, I'm not coming back here and spending no more money. To me, that's a form of cancel culture, and that's okay. The other side of cancel culture that I struggle with is the opportunity to be redeemed and or to grow. Right. And I think cancel culture at times limits, and let me also preface this, it is situational, because the same grace extended to person A on Monday may not be extended to person B on Friday. Or may not need to be, right? And so because cancel culture limits the opportunity to grow and to see progress, I think that's why I struggle with cancel culture, because I think people are human. We all, to your point, are all flawed, have tweeted, said, done problematic things. And the only difference between us, and I know we have to shrink it down, but in comparison to celebrities, is that we don't have people actively digging in our shit. But like Beyonce has people looking at her tweets all the way back to 2010, 14, if she even had a Twitter then. But like people always poking and prying in their past life to find something to bring up about something. And so I feel like while I appreciate cancel culture for establishing boundaries and establishing like, we're not gonna take your bullshit. You gonna say some problematic ass shit, the baby. We're not fucking with you. If we turn around on this end though and recognize, and I use the baby in the same way. If the baby actually grew and actually matured and actually educated himself on the issues of what he did, then at that point, we'd be open to conversation.
Well, I feel like that too. I'm like, I think we take it too far sometimes. I think we...
Too far?
I do. I think we take it too far, because I don't think that you fuck up like one time with celebrities speaking. If they fuck up one time, like we just cancel everything. I'm like, because...
And this is to my point. So you, that's what I was gonna say. So I think that like cancel culture has two sides, right? So I look at the Bill Cosby situation. I look at the R. Kelly situation. So you have a repetitive action. Now that's different. You have a repetitive action that has happened over a period of time, and people are all coming out at once. But then I'm going to talk about two other situations. So the people tried to cancel Sha'Carri Richardson. They also tried to cancel Lil Nas. And they tried to cancel Sha'Carri.
Now, who tried to cancel them? Because if it's the cis hits, then that makes sense.
No, the gays. Because Sha'Carri Richardson had made a tweet when she was in middle school about the queer community. It was something about I don't like boys wearing dresses. It was something.
This is my point. She was immature. She was uneducated. Cancel culture didn't give her opportunity to grow.
But the thing about it is, cancel culture didn't have an opportunity to grow, but cancel culture taught her to be mindful about what she put out there. Cancel culture also taught her that when you are in a position of power, or when you have a platform, influence, you have to be mindful about the shit that you say today and about the shit that you said years ago.
I dated a guy once upon a time, and I said something on social media, and this was like back in 2019. I was dating this guy, and he called me. I didn't even really think about what I put out there. He FaceTimed me and cussed me the fuck out and said, "Motherfucker, what the fuck is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "The shit you put on social media just now." I said, what do you mean? Like, and he read it to me. I said, "Yeah, what about it?" He's like, "Zach, you not one of these everyday ass niggas. You have a platform and people listen and look at you as a role model. You can't say this shit like I can say this shit." And that's why I jumped in, Chris, because to your point, I thought about that. You know, when people follow you, look at you, use you as a gauge to their life, there are certain things, whether good, bad, or indifferent, and I'm not saying it's not fucked up, but you just can't say or do.
But in that instance, but you learn from that experience. But what I'm saying is if you made that statement and you didn't have your friend to call you out on, and people just cancel you left and right, that would be unfair.
And I'm gonna tell you another thing that adds to it that people fail to realize, or people don't think about, is that how people who get canceled respond to the action of them being canceled, right? So when somebody calls you out on your shit, are you gonna say, "You know what? Yeah, I did it. I shouldn't have did it. It was a mistake. I didn't know. I was unaware. I know better now. I'm educated now"? Or are people gonna be like, "Child, I ain't did it. These people feelings don't matter," or "I ain't saying nothing"? Do you ignore it? So I think that a big part of cancel culture too is how you respond to being canceled, because how you respond is going to decide how people react to it, how people jump on the bandwagon. If people gonna repost or retweet, people gonna be about it. The reason why, if the baby would have came out and said, "You know what? I fucked up. I apologize," it wouldn't have been as bad for him as it had been. But the nigga didn't say, "Oh, I'm sorry."
He didn't say.
But I also think
he didn't say nothing. And when he did, it was too late.
But I also think, I agree, but I also think he was reacting to what he was receiving. People that, you're being right. No. I think he was, because, okay, if anybody say, okay, Chris put something on Facebook, I go to him and be like, "Bitch, what the fuck?" And I'm attacking him. He may not come back and be like, "Well, yeah, I'm sorry." Like, he may have a future.
No. Because I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, you right."
Well, yeah, and it also depends on the relationship too. But if it was a random say and they came and was attacking you about what you said, you're gonna respond.
I think there's some truth though to how, like, if somebody says something to me or about y'all, or says something about, it's just visceral, I'm gonna probably come upside their head. Now, should I have engaged a different approach? Probably. However, there's also not to say that there's not some truth to what I'm telling this person.
So let me add this. Let me put this on the table when it comes to cancel culture, because, and maybe this is just me, you can tell me otherwise if you experience differently. When it comes to cancel culture, the people who are oftentimes holistically not canceled are people who are the most privileged. We don't ever give consideration and credence to their moment of opportunity to learn and grow as a person to people who are oftentimes marginalized. Example, Chris and Michelle. Mm-hmm. We owe her an apology. We do. In my opinion, Sha'Carri Richardson, we owe her an apology. In my opinion, what's the other T.S. Madison? No, not T.S. Madison. It was another trans woman that had said something. I can't think of her name. I say this to say, when it comes to, and even Lil Nas, if Lil Nas even said something problematic, I think.
Well, no, he
for,
didn't say anything. It was that video that people tried.
Oh, okay, so even better. That further affirms my point. To be a marginalized identity and do something against the grain equates to being canceled permanently. No redemption, no opportunity. However, we let Boosie come out here, be homophobic, transphobic on a daily basis. We turn around, we let the baby come out here, be homophobic, transphobic, do all this smoke and mirrors, trying to make us think that he's actually making a progress and expanding his horizons around the community, and he's not. Still gets opportunity. We still got all these, and I don't want to lump them all together, but it tends to be the cishet black men. People still riding for Bill Cosby. People still riding for R. Kelly. It's the cishet black men that we be like, on Monday to Friday, or Monday to Wednesday, okay, you cancel. But then we be jamming their music throughout the weekend. And so my point is that cancel culture, I think, is another byproduct of all the many systems of oppression that continually disproportionately oppress those who was meant to actually liberate.
And rooted in patriarchy.
So that's why I have a give and take relationship with cancel culture, because in the times that I had, to the point that you made, Chris, which I think is a very valid point. If you come out and person up, I'm gonna say man up, person up and say, look, I fucked up, I said this wrong, did this wrong, and I'm gonna do better, then it'll be a lot different. But the people who tend to do that are the people I just named. The in Little Nice case, he had nothing to apologize for, but they own up to it. The baby doubled down. Lil Boosie doubled down. R. Kelly doubled down. So like these men were unapologetic in what the fuck they did in the community and how they have impacted people, and we have yet to cancel them. So my thing is, cancel culture doesn't benefit people in marginalized communities.
And I think it also goes back to like the whole idea around advocacy, allyship, and accompliceship. So I think that also when like you have people who are supporting you, who are in positions of power and they're advocating for you, things are gonna change and look differently. I think in the case of the baby and Boosie, they had so many people backing them up who also viewed and thought the same way that they thought. Also, right? Right. And so, and also in our community. And so like I think like those people who advocate for the actions of people wrong or wrong play a role into how people are canceled or not canceled and how they react to being canceled or not canceled too. Because even thinking about with R. Kelly, right? So R. Kelly did what he did. We all know it's true. I don't think that nobody doesn't believe he's true because R. Kelly was so instrumental to music and because R. Kelly made so many connections and because R. Kelly inspired and put so many people on.
And he came out of like prime example,
to bottom side, there were so many people that came and ran to his defense that chose to advocate for him just based off the strength of who he was or where he was from or situations that they had been in, and I understood that he probably made a mistake because that's who they choose to advocate for. But versus if it was somebody like Lil Nas X, when they were trying to cancel him for being openly gay and for highlighting our community, he's trying to push a message, or it's a gay agenda, or he's trying to, warp our kids. It's different because those same people who stood up for Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, they're in line with that heteronormative, cisnormative way of thinking, and that's what they're inclined. That's what they're inclined to flow with, versus them advocating and becoming an ally for something unknown, even when it's still on the same platform, right? So I think a lot of cancel culture has to do with those people who are advocating for the cancellation and advocating for those culture moments, but also those people who are allies to the people who are being canceled, and how are you speaking up, right? And how are you standing up for these people? So we as people, a lot of times in the times of cancel culture, when people who don't have that privilege or who don't have that level of influence, we have to be mindful that cancel culture can sometimes be a double standard, and we have to check our own biases at the door with anything that we do. You see what I'm saying? We have to learn how to check our own biases at the door, and we just can't see things based on face value and what we like, right? We have to look at the full picture and the system and how it affects everybody and not just our own experience.
Hot take, real quick, because you did say standing at our own door. I think the thing with cancel culture is people are so quick to want to implement cancel culture on people because we all live in glass houses. I'm gonna throw the stone at your house before I let it be thrown in mine, and I'm going to align myself with the person similar to R. Kelly, like you were talking about, Chris. Oh well, I'm gonna align myself with him, and I'm gonna protect R. Kelly's house, and I'm gonna throw stones at Lil Nas's house because I secretly probably think the same way that R. Kelly does, or in some way. And so my issue also with cancel culture is that we allow it to be very situational. Nah, bring your dirty laundry out in this bitch and let's do that shit. And see if you get canceled and see how you would feel.
So how would this, bringing it down to our front, our front street, how would that, what we just talked about, how does that translate into our own communities, our own relationships, friendships?
I feel like the black community, honestly, needs to cancel a lot of shit that we don't want to talk about, we don't want to deal with. Prime example, we need to cancel aspects, I'm not going to say the whole institution, but aspects of the black church. Aspects of the black church. And I know the Bible thumpers in our community, I love y'all. I also want to know we can always do brunch, we can kiki, all that good stuff, have a praise and worship session. Also, it's toxicity that exists within the confines of the black church. There's not financial empowerment, but yet you want me to pay you 10% of my tithes and then turn around and pay you offering at least twice in that same service. There's not any opportunity for you to be included if you're part of the LGBTQ community, but yet you want me to operate and put your choir in 3-part harmony perfectly. Then you want me to sit there, if I'm a woman, and sit there and bring you your glass of water after you preach a sermon, but you won't let me get in the pulpit otherwise unless I'm serving you. But then I also can't wear, depending on the denomination, I can't even wear jeans. And then we got clergy molesting kids. I just want us to talk about it.
Other aspects of the black
It needs to be canceled.
Other aspects, and Harold and I were talking about this on our way over. The toxicity of the black family to where you feel like it's your responsibility as the I've made it child to take care of those who don't take care of their own shit. Let me tell you something. It is extremely problematic from a community standpoint to expect me to take abuse from big mama, pawpaw, uncle, siblings, but then turn around, do my shit, go to school, get 3 degrees, bitch, and certifications, and then turn around and be like, you know what? I'm gonna take care of the people who mistreated me. But it is it's giving Stockholm syndrome. Right, it's giving Stockholm syndrome. Where, and for those who don't know what Stockholm syndrome is, it is where you are connected to and emblazoned with your abuser, and so you feel like because of this trauma bond, I have to take care of this person. But that aspect of the black family, I have told my family multiple times, my twin brother and I, baby, let me tell you something. I ain't got kids, and the kids I do got, they grown. I didn't go to school 3 times to take care of nobody's kids who ain't taking care of their kids themselves. I don't work for you. I work for me. And what I give you outside of that, it's charity. And so, but the black family puts us in this mentality of, well, we family, you gotta take care, I ain't gotta do a motherfucking thing. And so when we were speaking to the black family, that triggered me. So I'm gonna sit back.
I think, to your point, I think that when it comes to helping out your family, do it because you can and because you want to. Don't do it because you're expected to do it. Right. I think that a lot of times when you do things because you're expected to do it, you start to do it because you'll do it even when you don't have it. Mm-hmm. And that dismantles the black family as well, right? Mm-hmm. So to anybody, I feel like you should do things if you want to and if you can, but don't do it because people expect you to do it when it comes to family. The thing that I feel like we should counsel within community, I'm going to take it a step out the black community and go to the LGBTQ community, is the whole idea around no fats and no femmes, and also the whole idea around people's HIV statuses. I think that a lot of times that it's like just with being like a queer black man, I think that people judge us based off how we look, or just judge us based off our status without knowing our story.
Question before you finish: and I've always wanted to know this. Why do you think that is within our community? Like,
Because we model off of heterosexual existence and relationships.
And also we're men.
Like it's the same script that we use in the queer community, the same exact script that's used in the heterosexual community, line for line.
Because think about it just like this. A lot of the power dynamics and a lot of the shifts and the paradigms and inequities that are faced within the cishet community come from the black man. Even though we're gay, we're still black men. So just because we don't like the opposite sex doesn't mean that a lot of us don't have the same cultural norms or we don't present the same cultural barriers that were presented to us growing up because of what we like to sleep with, right? So we still gonna try to subconsciously put people in their place based off of where we came from. This whole idea about no fats and femmes. Now, granted, you can have your own preference, but when you start putting your preference out there, you make monetary enhancements, right? And the whole idea around no fats, no femmes becomes a part of the culture. You are demeaning people who may see themselves as that, right? So that creates a lot of mental health issues. That creates a lot of isolation. That creates stigma, right? And discrimination against people who fit within those categories. Because really, that could be you. You know, because femininity and masculinity is definitely on the scale and the spectrum. And who are we to tell someone what is too feminine and what is too masculine? Same way. And when it comes to the whole idea about HIV positive and HIV negative, most people who are living with HIV got HIV because someone gave it to them. It was not something they wanted to do. So who are we to put people inside of a box based off of a situation that happened to them that 9 times out of 10 they didn't have no control over?
So with that, that's heavy. I'm gonna take us to a commercial break before we get canceled. Okay, because this is for the culture and we're not trying to have it canceled. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Blackberry View, y'all. We're about to go ahead and get into our second half of our episode. Now, before I go any further, for those who may just be tapping in, I want to take this opportunity to let you know about our special episode we're going to be doing on February 16th at SMU. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that at the end, so stay tuned. And now I'm going to pass it to my good friend Chris for his favorite section, everybody's favorite section, WTF, Why Those Feelings.
Hey, how are y'all? Thank you, Harold, for that amazing introduction. As you may know, and if you don't know, my name is Chris. You can follow me at Chris, your hero, because I am your hero, okay? And today...
Did we really need all that?
Yes, it's a part of my character.
It's a part of his aesthetic.
Yeah.
So says the bitch on the pit.
Right, girl. She already on a process improvement plan.
Shit. Got Chris and us out here in these streets
Right.
waiting for you.
And you
Back to your topic, honey.
Yeah, because it's gonna be about you and how we gonna counsel you. But as I was saying, now we're gonna get into WTF and what are those feelings. So today we talked a few things. We talked about cancel culture and we talked about the process of cancel culture and what it looks like, right? We also talked about what it feels like. And one thing we didn't discuss is the feelings of those people who've gotten canceled, right? So we're gonna end there, but first we're gonna start. I wanna ask you all, have you ever had to cancel somebody in your life? And with canceling this person, what happened and how did they make you feel during the process?
Child, we not about to have a therapy session today. We won't.
Baby, I had therapy yesterday, baby. She already dragged my edges. I have had to cancel some folks in my life. And I think it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about with the black family earlier, but also like when you think about relationships and how you interact with people. there comes a point in your life, I believe. Well, I'm going to use I statements because I'm not going to make this germane to everyone else. There's come points in my life where I have had to really consider the power of relationships and what those relationships and that power had over me. And there are oftentimes, there's an old saying that says, I've been the villain in some stories and the hero in others. And I too acknowledge that about myself. I've been the villain I think of one villain time in particular where I was a villain in someone's story. And he had to cancel me. And it was while I was living in Cincinnati. And my behaviors, the way that I projected shit onto him and things I did to him called for me to be canceled. And it's different, I think, when you're on the side of that cancellation. And you have this existential conversation with yourself about what the fuck, how did I get here? I'm not this type of person. However, then also going through that helped me recognize traits and personalities that I needed to separate myself from in life. And it's not an easy thing, right? Like to cancel a friendship or a relationship or somebody you've been in love with, like that's a really like grieving type of process. It's difficult. And so I give kudos and respect to any of us, to you, our viewers, who have had to do that, because that shit is not that easy. And there's still remnants of those feelings today that still come up for me. And it just, it weaves itself into my life.
I've had to, it's personal and professional. I've had to cancel jobs. Like I've had to cancel supervisors, I've had to cancel coworkers, I've had to cancel students, I've had to cancel relationships. Like, and I think with anything, when you have time invested into it and energy and emotions, you don't want to cancel it, right? There is difficulty canceling things that you are most connected to. And when you have to cancel it, it almost in some ways in your mind you feel as if it severs those ties. And here's the other thing too. Earlier when we were talking about cancel culture, I used the word boundary. I think also recognizing that canceling can also be a form of boundary creation. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's hard creating a boundary because emphatically you are drawing a line in the sand with people, places, and things that are not being productive and progressive for you. And so while it's uncomfortable, it's necessary. And I think you get used to it over time. I think as you get older, it becomes more of a second nature to be like, okay,
self-love.
right. And that is not being. I heard Jan Van Zant say this one time. You prioritizing you is not being selfish; it's being self-full.
Exactly.
And I think canceling things out of your life is definitely being self-full, because there are things and places and people that I've canceled. And baby, I sleep. To be clear, I was sleeping good, fine, before the moment that I canceled them. But I sleep even better now that I know that you're not actively in my life.
I would also say, like, for me, and yes, I agree with that, but for me, it depends on the relationship and how rooted our relationship is. Like, for example, my situation, I had a situation where a really close friend of mine back in undergrad, I was still in this place where I'm trying to like identify and figure out like who I wanted to be and who I was, And so
They fucked your man.
no, well, no.
That's not a black man.
But no, but he robbed me of like my coming out story to like a lot of my friends, and it really hurt. And this was like, I know
For colored girls, such.
listen. And this was a really close friend, and it hurt me to my core because again, I was at a place where I'm still trying to like figure things out, and I went to him in confidence and like told him, this is what I'm experiencing, and he also is a gay male too. So saying all of that to say, I ended up canceling him, but it hurt me because I had to cancel that relationship because I really loved him. He was a really, really close friend. So saying all of that to say,
We'll beat that bitch up.
listen, we went through some shit. But fast forward to now, like I finally got to a place where we can be amicable, and we can be really, I wouldn't say like best friends again, but we're cool. But it took me a long time to get to that place. So kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about redemption, I think some people can be redeemed, once they've been counseled, but I think it's contingent on have they learned something from that experience.
I do think we should practice uncanceling folk.
Yes.
Because I think there are some people to your point you just made. I think there's opportunity for us to reestablish those relationships. I've had to uncancel some people because at the time that I counseled them, I could not see how they were actually contributing to my life and not actually taking away from it. And because I didn't have the maturity and understanding to really see that, like, oh, you're not harming me. You're really just trying to get me to be better. Yeah. And so I think we should also practice uncancel culture. So yeah.
Counter canceling. I think for me, I'm gonna start one place and then I'm gonna take it somewhere else. And when I take it somewhere else, it's gonna lead into a whole other conversation. So for me, when I think about canceling, and you struck a nerve with me when you said I had to cancel a job. So there was this job that I had to cancel. And in this position, I started at the bottom and really got myself to the top. I had just graduated college and I was really feeling myself. I was doing what needed to be done. But how leadership dealt with people within the community, I didn't appreciate. And primarily, especially with communities that I represented, it was that we were ran by a list of purpose and mission statements and goals and values, but that was not referenced in the everyday, or that was not the representation of what my day-to-day work looked like. And so because I had rose to a position of power, it did not affect me, but it affected people who looked like me and people who were of my same demographic in that space. And so for a while, I was like, okay, I don't see it, I'm hiding because I'm good. I'm good, right? I'm good, I'm okay. No, Chris is good, but they're gonna figure it out. But it had to come to a point to where I had to realize that it's not right. And I had to cancel that position, even though I was not the one on the receiving end of whatever was going, but I saw the trauma that what was happening presented in other people's lives. I had to make it up in my mind that I had to walk with integrity, right? And activate a response to change by changing a job and telling them, hey, this is why I'm leaving, because this is not right. So I'm going to cancel those actions that you've been doing, and I'm going to be the martyr for other people and other voices, right? And so through that engagement and thinking about it, I also realized that sometimes we have to cancel ourselves. Because I took too long to advocate for people, I had to cancel myself in that moment for not being the best person that I could be for people who look like me. And oftentimes we have to cancel ourselves and take accountability for where we've been wronged. Take accountability for the things that we've done to wrong other people. Sit in it and actively make plans to change it. So my next question is, how does it feel? Or have you ever had a time when you've had to cancel yourself when you didn't want to?
I have. Yes, I have. And I laugh because at the time I was really stubborn and I projected it on the other person and made them feel like it was their fault, but in actuality it was me. Mm-hmm. So it took me a while, but yes. And it was actually with my best friend Trey. We had, this was maybe 2-3 years ago, but we had like a whole Facebook spat. It's like I posted something, he responded, and we just went back and forth. And we had never done that before. But I was attacking him, and then I was like, it's all his fault. And we canceled each other. Didn't talk for almost a year actually, but we had a lot of our friends that were trying to, like they pulled our coattails and told us about ourselves. But again, I was stubborn in the moment. I was like, it ain't my fault. I didn't say anything wrong. But then, kind of what you were saying early, like you go back and you read things that you say, and be like, yeah.
So I
was like, yeah.
I'm toxic. I'm the drama.
yes, and I own it, but
I just go back to the situation that I dealt with in Cincinnati. That was the first time I really ever broke someone's heart, And like the fact that I was his coming out story, I was, you know, the first guy that he like engaged in like really being his full, authentic, true self with, and he was amazing. Like, and to this day, he's still amazing. But I realized I definitely had to cancel myself on that because that's not who I am, and that's never been the person that I am. And Q, to your point, I took out shit on him that he didn't deserve. And to this day, I still have canceled big parts of myself behind that because when you genuinely hurt someone, the worst thing that a victim can do is go out and create another one. And that's exactly what I did.
But a lot of times that's what hurt people do, because hurt people always hurt people.
Mine's really quick. I just think, and the girls that get this, the girls that get it, and the girls that don't. But I had to counsel myself from engagement in certain activities that were ritualistic in nature, and because it was putting people in possible harm's way. And I, after seeing a scenario, a situation that I experienced, I could not be that person on that side, being the aggressor in that moment. And so I had to counsel myself from that and be like, you know what? Be that what it may, and it is what it is. I just cannot participate and engage. So, okay, and that's you get it. You get it. All right, move it back to you, Chris.
Let's breathe, connect. So thank y'all for being. I know everything on me is hot. Oh. So let's connect.
Hot pocket. That's cute, y'all.
So in this moment, I want to thank you all for allowing yourselves to be vulnerable, because it takes a lot to talk about traumatic experience, and it also takes a lot to talk about ourselves from an aspect of when we fucked up. So thank you for taking the time to be honest. Thank you for taking the time to be authentic. And thank you for showing up for yourselves and for our viewers. And to our viewers out there, I want to remind you to cancel culture can be a good thing or a bad thing. But think about this. Before you quick to cancel other people, will you do the same for yourself? And this has been What Are Those Feelings?
Waiting to exhale, huh?
Deep breath, what you think?
Oh, y'all let me
How are you the only one who did not understand the assignment?
Even with one less bitch, you still.
Right. I was ready to.
Bitch, I'm still here.
And we're gonna wrap.
All right.
And go to.
You still his job now?
Oh, I thought we was going to commercial.
Oh, child, with tips and dips, you going the hell on.
Tip, and dip. Bitch.
We are now back with tips and dip. And so we have had a robust conversation about cancel culture this episode. Chris he done pulled us together in Waiting to Exhale for Colored Girls, Insecure, Girlfriends, all types of shit. You know, why can't we get positive images of black men? Oh, like that. Why can't we? So going into tips and dip. So my tip and dip for you all today is cancel culture versus cancel culture. And it may sound simplistic when I say it. However, what I mean by that is, let's look at the lowercase c's versus the uppercase c's, right? Okay. And so lowercase cancel culture, it could be your everyday, minor, slight, I'm not fucking with that, I'm not fucking with them type of mentality, versus the uppercase cancel culture, which lends itself a lot to what Chris said in WTF in our previous segment. That's the more grandiose, the more impactful type of cancel culture. Like you really canceling somebody or yourself and taking that introspection. So my tip and dip for you all today is know the difference between the two. there are situations and instances that happen in our society to where you're like, you know what? This doesn't yuck my yum. I can't fuck with this. I can't align with this. And you can cancel that. And that's that's your right. However, when we look at the uppercase version of cancel culture and think about the concept from that mentality, the deeper seated results of cancel culture, even some introspection into yourself. What does it mean when you really look at yourself in the mirror? Like Issa looked at herself and was talking to Mirror Bitch in Insecure. Yes. Shout out to Insecure, we still miss it. Yes. And really have to have those conversations about, damn, all right, this is a crossroads that I'm at as an individual. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I have said to my students in the past, and Harold has probably heard me say this, if you want to change some things about your life, the first thing you got to do is change some things about your life. And sometimes that means canceling behaviors and activities that you have engaged in, affiliated with, thought about, and therefore, I'm gonna get to you, niece. I'm gonna get to you. In order for you to become that next person. I'm about to be 41 years old on February 2nd. I am. And there are aspects of my life that I've had to look at, looking back, and realizing this no longer has space for me. Mm-hmm. And so what I would challenge you all to do is take that inventory for yourself. And what I want to ask my co-hosts is, as we have now started this new year, Harold has had his birthday. I'm about to have my birthday. Birthdays are coming up. Birthdays are past. Quentin, you've had your birthday, right? Mm-hmm. Q's had his birthday. Mm-hmm. What is one thing, really quick, as you think about taking inventory of your life that no longer serves you right now? And how will you find yourself removing that and canceling that from your life this year?
I am canceling, explaining my no. Oh, sorry. Gotta be quicker than that. If I give a no, it's a no. If somebody asks me why, it's because I said no. This is it. No is a word and a statement at the same time.
No is a complete answer. And the thing about that, Harold, is that when you say yes to something, nobody asks you, oh, well, Chris, why did you say yes? They just take your yes and be like, yes, he said yes. But if you say no, they be like, well, why'd you say no? Well, why'd you say no? No is a complete sentence. Yep. You never have to explain. Good shit, son. Chris?
I think that when I think about, so you said something that's just really struck me. You talk about cancel culture and you talked about the big C and the little C's. And I think that before I get into it, I want people to be reminded of like this little phrase. Sometimes you have to cancel what you see in me. And so what I see within myself is that I have a lot of negative spending habits. So I'm actively working on canceling those negative spending habits. Not spending unnecessary money, make sure I'm saving more, make sure I'm investing, because I'm in my mid-20s, right? So the 20s is when you set yourself up for the rest of your life. And I want to make sure that I'm setting myself up appropriately and accurately with everything, with longevity as well. So I'm canceling what I see within myself as my negative spending habits.
I'd say that I am for sure canceling those that violate my boundaries. Those boundaries that I put up for myself, canceling the fuck out of them. Because I used to always give people a pass or I'll make excuses for those that's violators or whatever. But I can't do that anymore because that's, I'm taking parts of myself and compromising, my values, beliefs, whatever, to appease someone else. And I just refuse to do that. So I'm just going to cancel your ass.
So,
out of Q's box.
Out of Q's box. So it's ironic that we're having this conversation because yesterday I had therapy. Shout out to my therapist, a phenomenal Black woman. Black women say today, every day. And we don't thank y'all enough. So thank you, Black women, for doing that. She asked, we were talking about communication. And one of the things that I used to do, similar to UQ, I used to make excuses for people. And I used to make excuses and attach those excuses to the reasons why people didn't want me in their life or didn't want me as a romantic partner or whatever. And what she told me yesterday was, all right, Zach, I think what you need to do is really think about what does this say about them, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be you trying to make excuses for these people. What does this say about them and their journey? And maybe their journey is not aligned with yours, and that is okay. I'm used to being a fixer, and the thing about what I need to cancel this year, number one, all encompassing, is trying to fix other people's shit. Because then they grow this counterdependency on you to always fix their shit. So, I leave you all with, do inventory on yourself, on what you need to cancel for yourself, but also understand the little C's of cancel culture and the big C's of cancel culture and the ramifications of both.
Come on.
And so with that, Harold, I'm going to pass it back to you to close us on out.
Well, I appreciate all the sentiments shared throughout this episode because cancel culture is something that I don't think we're going to see going anywhere no time soon. But in that same vein, make sure to your point that you are thinking about things you need to cancel in your life. But baby, don't cancel us because we're going to come right back for another episode, another seasons, all these good things. You want to stay tapped into the Blackberry Review. And before I leave, I want to mention again that we will be at Southern Methodist University, seated in Dallas, Texas, February 16th, live and in color for an episode that you do not want to miss. And so follow us on all our social media platforms. Be sure to check out all the information and feel free to pull up on us. We would love to have you.
It starts at 6.
6:30, but be there at 5:30. Be there because the line gonna be long. Okay, and I'm not saying we gonna
Meet me there.
meet me there. Yeah. We're not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole. With that being said, thank y'all for tuning in. Peace.